I've had several different lives. I played hockey growing up through college, and then I got a record deal and I was on the road for about 15 years. While I was doing that, we also had restaurants. When I wasn't playing music, I was working in commercial kitchens. And then my family and friends and I started the brewery part of that business. I'm just carbon filtering any sort of chlorine byproducts that might be in the water, but using the water profile from here so it tastes like the tap water from here. A lot of our beers, they taste like what a hike in the hills here smell like. I don't really distribute outside of that. And then 3 years ago, we started a winery as well. I will put any of my beers up in a line of 30 beers and guarantee you can pick out it's me.
Hey everyone, I'm excited to welcome you to another episode of the Beverage Biz Podcast. We have a very special guest today, Jeremy Hafner of Ojai Valley Brewing. And hopefully I pronounced that right.
Yeah.
So you guys are a craft brewery out of Southern California. Welcome to the show. First of all, excited to have you here today.
Thank you, sir.
And I guess just to kick us off here, can you just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the brewing industry?
Yeah, I've had several different lives. I played hockey growing up through college, and then I got a record deal and I was on the road for about 15 years. While I was doing that, we also had restaurants. When I wasn't playing music, I was working in commercial kitchens. And then my family and friends and I started the brewery part of that business 10 years ago this month. Relatively small brewery where we were just servicing our restaurant, and then it got a little bit bigger. We could service sort of all of the stuff in Ojai. My issue has always been making enough beer to keep up. And so I basically just say no to everybody outside of you're either in the Ojai Valley and I say yes, or you're a chef that I really enjoy what you do and I'll say yes. But aside from that, I don't really distribute outside of that. And then 3 years ago, we started a winery as well.
Wow. Nice. So you've been kind of entrenched in the industry for quite some time, 10 years as a brewery, restaurants before that. I think I saw that on the website that you actually put on the homepage. Our goal is not growth, which is, why I guess you turned down a lot of business. It sounds like it's more about the experience and creating a really nice product.
Yeah, well, I my opinion of it is at a very top level sort of idea is having come out of fine dining and restaurants like that. Honestly, if you are trying to give people the absolute best possible product in a novel way that they haven't had before, once you scale it, you lose that pretty quickly. And I've seen what it looks like to scale up from 15 barrels to a 65,000 square foot facility. I've had friends who have done it with other breweries, and it just didn't look like a feasible way to do what we do with that business model. So I've mostly just been fighting off capital for years.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, that's cool that you've kind of planted your flag in the ground and you're like, this is who we are. This is what we're about. This is what our mission is. Cause I think a lot of people can get so caught up in the growth side of things. Like it's such a shiny object kind of dangling in front of them.
Yeah. And I've seen it work out for people, and I've seen the other side of it. A lot of what's happened over the last decade was a lot of people start these businesses assuming that they're going to build a massive asset and they've already got their exit plan on the horizon. And what happened was, I think it was was it 8 years ago that Ballast Point sold? And that was really a turning point in how macro breweries approached acquisition of craft breweries. And what happened was, a lot of these breweries built themselves to be constantly growing, constantly capital raising, constantly getting bigger, constantly expanding their distribution. And then the market played out the way it did, which was, Ballast Point gets acquired, and within 3 years, 80% of their drinkership drops off because nobody wants to drink the macro thing, and that's purely the marketing. So what happened was the big Constellations and InBevs and stuff stopped buying these breweries out, and all of these people were left with, they're on their third, fourth, fifth capital raise of 5 million plus, and they're never going to sell their company. So now what happens is InBev and Constellation has their regional distribution company, which is Pacific Beverage here for InBev. So they're not technically InBev, but they're completely subsidized by InBev, and they'll come in and buy out the distribution rights for these breweries that have sized up to that place where like they have to keep feeding the animal or else it's going to die. And now InBev owns your distribution rights. You have to produce for them. You'll never get them back, and you're never going to sell your business. So for me, especially with what we do, we specialize in making beers with all the stuff that grows in the hills here. My 30-second spiel on that would be, the Reinheitsgebot happened about 600 years ago. It's the German purity law, obviously, that says, beer is barley, hops, and water, because they didn't understand yeast at the time. And there's thousands of years of brewing, like at a traditional level, that was more like gin. It's like, we're going to surplus this grain and we're going to use the botanicals that are around here to balance out that beverage. And that led to some very interesting regionalities to beer that persisted through a lot of like post Reinheitsgebot beer making. And our whole thing here is, rather than playing cover songs and aping beers from classical European styles, we're going to make beers that are about this area.
Makes sense. And I guess, by definition, since those beers are from your specific area, that's what makes you unique. And that's kind of the selling point for the people who drink your beers, because your customers are all drinking it in this specific area.
Yeah. And, we've got a great water reserve here in the Casitas Lake. The water here is super hard, like 300 parts per million harder than what's considered extremely hard. But when you think about the advent of modern beer, I mean, most people think about Belgium and Germany. So like Dortmund's famous for lagers because they've got that hard water there. And then Vienna lagers came about because, Vienna just didn't have the calcium content. So they created Vienna malts, like kiln malts, in order to acidulate the mashes better. So then you have these varieties that are popping up in these European areas specifically because of their water profile. So like for me, most of the big breweries I go into are running these giant reverse osmosis water systems and stripping the water all the way down to nothing, and then chemically rebuilding it with salts to be like it's from Dortmund or like Trent, England for, IPAs. Me, I'm just taking out, I'm just carbon filtering any sort of like chlorine byproducts that might be in the water, but like using the water profile from here. So it tastes like the tap water from here, plus all the stuff that we're doing. Cause I mean, a lot of our beers, they taste like what a hike in the hills here smell like.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that so many breweries do that, where they modify the water to match the water of different areas of the world, depending on the beer that they're brewing.
Well, you should go ahead and ask some of these breweries, because I would say that any brewery over a 30 barrel system is probably like 99% doing that. And I mean, it's massively wasteful for water, which we're pretty conscious of in this area of the world. But it also it leads to creating these beer styles that, like, they probably taste like they're from the area ostensibly that they're supposed to be coming from, but they certainly don't taste like the area they're coming from. And that's sad to me because, it's like, especially you being on the East Coast, I mean, you understand, like, how many times has somebody told you that the bagel in Manhattan's just better because of the water profile there? But you've still got big breweries there that are using reverse osmosis water systems instead of utilizing something that people are literally shipping to pizzerias around the country to try to emulate.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So, diving more into the area that you're in, one of the things we briefly chatted about before the podcast is that you're surrounded by all these different wineries and restaurants, and you're really in, from what it looks like, kind of the heart of wine country. So how does that shake out being the brewery in the area? Is it a challenge? Do you find it to be a positive thing for you being in wine country?
Well, I mean, I would redefine it for you. We're at the very most southern tip of what is nascently wine country, and there has been wine grown here for a long time, but predominantly this valley is famous for citrus. So, like, we grow a tangerine here called the Pixie, which you will find in Whole Foods in Baltimore in April. But we're
Mhm.
the only place that grows it. So, uh, this is really an ag valley. It's mostly citrus and avocado. There are some vineyards. We pretty much buy up all the grapes from the vineyards that are here for our
Mhm.
wine production. Uh, Most of the vineyards that are around here are shipping in grapes from Santa Ynez and places that are further north. But we're trying to, once again, my winemaker was the winemaker at a large vineyard here called the Ojai Vineyard, and he left there 3 years ago to start his own label at our place because he wanted to make esoteric wines that were using the fruit that were actually from the Ojai Valley instead of fruit that they were shipping in 100, 200 miles away.
Mm.
So, like, top to bottom, our whole mission is to be using what is here. The other interesting point about Ojai is it's this unique biosphere which is called chaparral,
Mhm.
and it primarily exists on like coastal peninsulas across a similar latitude. So you have it in like it's different, but you have it in like Italy and Greece and Turkey. So there's some of the stuff cuts across with different varieties like sumac and the sages and the sagebrush and different types of mugworts and artemisias and things like that. And it's a whole bunch of like really resinous edible plants that grow wild in the foothills. So we
Mm.
utilize a lot of that stuff, and all of that stuff. The European varieties of that stuff has been used to bitter alcoholic beverages for thousands of years.
Hmm. That's fascinating. So it's basically just along some
Uh,
latitudinal line.
yeah, but I mean, like, so the chaparral biosphere probably it extends about 100 miles north of us, and then it extends down into Baja in Mexico. So you get some of that stuff along that whole area, but it's like a predominantly Mediterranean, western facing peninsular like biosphere that's like scrub brushland.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think I saw a video of on your site of you guys like picking some sage or something and chopping it up and
Yeah.
making beer out of it.
Yeah, we do an amber ale. So like my partner in the brewery, Griffin Davis, his dad's English and he likes an ESB. So we made a an amber ale that's an homage to an ESB, but we bitter it with white, black, and purple sage.
Mm. Very cool. Very cool. And
Yeah.
so, looking at the tap room that you guys have, I know you mentioned you got into winemaking. You obviously have beer. You guys serve food there as well. Is it more of a restaurant experience or a traditional tap?
No, no, we ran a 5,000 square foot, 120 seat fine dining restaurant for 20 years. And we sold that 4 years ago when we built out the tap room at the brewery location. And I was sort of resigned to never running a commercial kitchen again. It's the restaurant business is a slim margin if you want to do it right, and the people who work in kitchens are nuts. I was definitely nuts myself, and putting that juggle on top of the bureaucratic reporting and all the necessities of running a business where you're creating a product that is age restricted and tax restricted seemed silly to me. So we have food trucks and friends who are chefs who come up and do pop ups and things like that. But I'm not running a kitchen at that place.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I haven't been in the restaurant business, but I hear nightmares about it. I hear it's brutal.
Yeah, the restaurant business has changed quite a bit in the last decade. I would say to anybody who's thinking about starting a restaurant, unless you are a chef and you love being somewhere 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, you definitely should not do it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I'm
Yeah.
sure. I mean, even running a tap room, you have to be there all the time, right?
Yeah, I mean, I pull shifts there, the slower shifts, so that I can give the tip shifts to the minimal amount of employees we have. But I mean, it's the restaurant had a top end of 40 employees at it. The people who bought it run it with 90 employees, and I run the tap room with 3. So the I think the people who bought our restaurant, their payroll weekly is 40 grand.
Wow.
So, and if 3 of the people, there's 3 people working in a tap room. If one of them is myself and one of them is my winemaker and there's one other person floating, then it's really minimizing the overhead costs of labor for that.
Yeah, much more manageable than 40 grand a week.
Well, yeah, and listen, like the tap room people and beer customers are just nicer than people at restaurants these days.
Mhm.
They're the type of people who are going to bring a glass back to the bar by themselves.
Yeah.
It's like it's so much nicer to run than a restaurant, just from like the expectation management level of it, but also just from the clientele is just nicer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think and you mentioned it was kind of like a fine dining restaurant too that you were running, right?
Yeah, yes, and those expectation levels are difficult to
Super
match.
high.
And well, yeah, and people, and it's gotten worse since COVID, but people have all gotten super special and mean about it.
Yeah.
And like I'm
Yeah.
watching my friends in restaurants right now and how they're dealing with it. And it's bad. Like you'll see 2 people come out for a $350 dinner for 2, and like the wife will like assault a waitress because she didn't bring lemon to the table. Like this happens. and it's and
Oh
it's
man.
it's appalling, and I don't know how restaurants are going to survive over the next 5 years. My opinion is that probably, unless you're taking a number at a counter or you're swinging at a Michelin star, everything in between that is probably dead in the next 5 years.
Oh man. I hope not. I
Well,
love
it's
this type
like,
of restaurant option.
so I mean, the not that this is on point with what we're supposed to be talking about, but like, the hardest, just like to give you an example of it that you may or may not uh partake in, but like, breakfast places. Like, when's the last time you went to a breakfast place?
It's been years.
Right, right. And is it because eggs and potatoes and hash browns cost $75 for 2 people?
Yeah, that would be why.
Yeah, and that's purely because you have to pay somebody to take your order and bring you your food.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the labor cost of the waiters, and especially in casual dining. In California, waiters make 16.50 an hour and then tips on top of that. So at
Mm.
our fine dining establishment, we had waiters and waitresses that were making like they're making like $1,500 to $2,000 a week
Wow.
between wage and tip. And when you factor all of that into payroll and workers' comp and stuff like that, all of a sudden you have to charge $30 for an omelet. So
Yeah, well, I see why you're going the tap room route with 3 employees. It's much more
and
manageable.
and no restaurant. Although I will say that the places that seem to do the best are a singular model. I'm sure you've seen it on your side, which is pizza and beer, and the pizza model has good margins. And
Yeah.
the interesting thing about breweries in the United States is they sort of do what pubs do in the UK, because there's this gray area of law where like it's not a restaurant, but it's not a bar. It's a non-retail manufacturing facility. So now you can have a family in there.
Yeah.
And that like it really like filled that gap for like, young families who were like just desperate to get outside.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, and to the point of the pizza and beer thing, I think just the ability to offer food but keeping operations very simple and clean is super important. I was talking with a guy yesterday who he, wanted to offer food in his tap room. So he just got this conveyor belt oven and he just throws these, these frozen, empanadas in there and they
Sure.
just roll through the conveyor belt. He doesn't have to hire any additional staff for it. It's one food item, but it kind of checks the box of like people have something to eat when they come in the tap room now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I think that model could probably work in a more metropolitan area where you have a larger or like just a larger mass of people who will come through your brewery on the daily. But my town's like, it's predominantly a tourist town. There are 5,000 people in the city proper. There are 32,000 people in the entire valley.
Mhm.
So frozen reheated empanadas would
not
not
not the
would
vibe.
not
Yes.
would not well, it wouldn't necessarily bring people back weekly. So for me, the novelty of different food trucks and different chefs works for us. Luckily, the chefs like us because they like sort of what we do. The downside to it is we're 20 miles away from like the nearest commercial kitchen for them to drive up from, and it's up into a valley, so they waste some gas getting here, but generally they do pretty good money. And
Yeah.
it keeps it novel for the people who are here. And my place is pretty local. I'm not on the main drag. I'm not really catering the tourist thing, which is a lot of what Ojai is. So yeah, I've got to keep it fresh for the regulars.
So your business, even though Ojai is largely tourism based, your business is mostly most of the revenue is coming from locals.
Yeah, and that was, because we had the 5,000 square foot high end dining, that business made it so that we had to skew towards the upscale tourist dollar. There's a five diamond resort in Ojai called the Ojai Valley Inn. Great golf course, really fantastic campus, beautiful place.
Mhm.
But in order to keep that animal alive, you needed to have, people had to spend at least $100 a person.
Mhm.
So we watched the locals feel like they were not really a piece of that, or that they weren't welcome in some way, which wasn't necessarily the case, but was sort of the psychology of that. So with this tap room, I've done things like I refuse to do buyouts.
Mhm.
Like I get offered constant money for private events and for weddings and things like that. And I just say no, because ultimately, like, I don't want anybody who lives in this town to ever show up at my place. And I'm like, sorry, you can't come in because more important people paid me more money.
Right.
Yeah. I
So
mean, it's,
you go ahead.
hmm,
Go ahead.
yeah, it's just, there's so yeah, we're off the main drags and none of the locals have to, they don't have to find parking to come to my place. It's
Yeah.
the easiest spot in Ojai is what we try to make it, and as casual as possible. I pay bands to come play. I don't charge admission.
Mhm.
I'm trying to be a good citizen.
Got it. So is from a marketing standpoint for this, do you do any marketing or is it mainly just like get locals in the door, show them a good time and, make it their
Yeah,
go-to spot?
there's a minimal amount of marketing that we do through like Google AdWords and just like basic social media stuff. We are not paying anybody to do public relations for us. And we're always sort of wrestling with, if we did this spend, would it bring us more money? And the answer generally is yes. But the X factor is, do we blow the place out and now locals don't want to come here?
Right.
And,
Right.
and
So
we
it's
see, we,
it's
yeah,
kind of
we
like a
see that.
best kept secret type thing.
Yeah. And we see that happen quite a bit in Ojai. And it's just a dance of kind of like, making everybody feel comfortable. And like simultaneously, like I was saying, I don't do buyouts. It kind of self selects a better tempered clientele, because I'll still have people come in with their wedding receptions of 100 people. And I tell them, like, listen, like, you're welcome to come in here and own the space, but there will be some locals here with you. And the people who are like, well, it has to be closed, I'm like, I definitely don't want to deal with you. And the people are
Yep.
like, cool. cool. Well, then like we'll just party with the locals. I'm like, these are absolutely the people I want to have here, and I will do what I can to make this, as good as I can for you.
Yeah. So you're just trying to create an environment that's not pretentious and, it's kind of laid back and welcoming for everyone.
Yeah, and still have it be nice and clean and spacious and Ojai, because
Yeah.
Ojai is, it's a spa, agricultural valley destination in the lower central coast of California, which is coveted real estate. But it's like, how do you make that for everybody truly? And it starts with policies like, we don't do buyouts.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. I want to, on our last topic here, I like to ask this question to everybody,
Mm.
just because, I think just the state of the industry right now is in a very, awkward position. So where do you see the brewery industry going in the next 5 years or so? What are some of your predictions that you think are going to take place for breweries in the next 5 years?
That's okay. Um, I'll start off by qualifying this with a conversation that I had with a CEO of a brewery that was starting the same time as me 10 years ago. They are now giant.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked me, what do you have on your tap list? And I said, no IPAs. He's like, how can you do that? He's like, it's the whole market. And I'm like, I just don't think it's the future of beer. He said, oh, yeah, what do you think the future of craft beer is over the next 5 years? And I said, all of you guys walking back everything you said about lager for the last 15. I think that I think that everybody who has done the cap raises and grown their businesses to get bought out and get stuck in a place where they couldn't get bought out is having a lot of problems because the entirety of their cash flow relies on distribution. And I'm talking to breweries up and down the West Coast when I'm hanging out with guys who own giant breweries and guys who own little breweries. The upside of us has been because we are smaller, it allows me to play and to pivot in ways that they just can't, because they can't commit to something playful at 1,000 gallons at a time,
Right.
because they just don't know if the market will accept it. I think that the only model, from what I can see by the numbers and the people that have shared wanting to go for whole, the numbers that I've seen from people who have big distribution but also have the tap room thing happening, is that the only money that they're truly making at a decent margin is in tap rooms. So I think that probably everybody's going to move into a more diversified tap room sort of model, where ultimately I imagine they'll have to work with brewery advocacy groups to get the ABCs across different states to allow them to have more satellite locations off of their licenses.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of people are going to have to really rethink their lineups, because I mean, the one sort of, I joke about it with people all the time, is like, I'll go into breweries all over the place and I'll walk in and see their lineup on the wall and they'll have 12 beers and 9 of them are IPAs. So I'm like, cool, you make 4 beers. and I think that and it's the same thing I said 10 years ago. I think that craft beer needs to get realistic about the fact that they're 2% of the entire drinkership of beer worldwide. Mm-hmm. And 98% of the world drinks lager. Mm-hmm. And although IPA was what moved the market for craft beer, also understanding that the science, just the food science level of it, says that 80% of people can't handle or don't like an IBU of across any food product over 20. And the baseline of like a standard IPA is like 35. It was really bad 10 years ago when all those dudes were like having an arms race making 160 IBU IPAs.
Yeah.
And, my argument at the time was, the craft beer industry does what they do with hops. If you did that with any other ingredient in any other way, all day long, you'd be getting plates back like, too salty, dude. I just can't eat this. And I think that I think that in a saturated industry where distribution is the outlet that people are leaning into, relying purely on your marketing is not going to be enough to differentiate yourself between other breweries when you're all essentially making the same product.
Yep.
And that people will be forced into becoming more regional with what they do, but like in a realistic way, not just being like, well, this is an East Coast IPA and this is a West Coast IPA. It's like, well, what is it about the East Coast that makes it taste different? And I'm not saying that I was, way out in front of this, but it's just like it seemed like a no-brainer to me a decade ago.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think a lot of the large mid-sized breweries who are expecting to get bought out and are not going to get bought out will probably fall over eventually, because it's just like, I know people who are doing millions and millions and millions and millions in cash flow, and every week they're like scrambling to make payroll, and they're the most popular brewery in the region, but like they can barely keep it together.
Yep.
And like people are going to have to get more nimble and smaller, realistically, because it's just like the market tolerances for utilities and labor and inputs are going to be so varying over the next 4 or 5 years that there is no projecting your bottom line. I mean, it's everybody's treading water to a certain degree. And I know chefs right now who have beef prices that in 1 week jumped from $350 to $1,550. So I mean, that's not that. I know for a fact that won't be rectified until 2029 because of what's happened with cattle in this country. And the headlines today are that we're thinking about sending tomahawks to Kiev. So what does that do for grain production for Europe? And then how do we start nationalizing grain production to start sending all of our grain to Europe to meet that shortfall? And what does that do to pricing on the back end of beer? And when you have beer in particular, it's like part of the reason why we started a winery is because the market tolerance for pricing in wine is so much greater than it is for beer, because beer's like people, you can't rationalize with people's feelings, and people have a pretty good feeling about what they think beer should cost.
Right.
Simultaneously, I can hand you a $50 bottle of wine and most people will just be like, oh, I bet it's good.
Right.
So it's like, I think that if your model is predicated on constant growth quarter over quarter, you're going to see a lot of things fall over, and you're going to see a lot of people get eaten in the process. Yeah. And I do not wish that for them, because they're all good guys and ladies, but like that business model, I think is done, and nobody's willing to admit it yet.
Yeah, I agree with basically everything that you said. And I see it all the time as I chat with brewery owners, and it is sad because everybody in this industry is so great. Everybody's super.
The brewing industry is so super cool.
They're super cool. Yeah, and so it's sad to see, but I never hear anybody say that they're looking to expand distribution at this point. I think everybody kind of realizes that distribution is dead. There's no margins. It's way too competitive nowadays, and everybody is shifting to the taproom model. But it's like the breweries who went into it with the plan to be set up with a taproom model can make it happen, and they're doing okay. But the ones who initially launched planning on scaling distribution and being a national beer brand are scrambling right now. And I don't know how you come back from that given the state of the market.
I mean, especially when you have part of the reason why we've said no to capital for so long is like, listen, at the end of the day, you can say that people are going to be silent investors, but if somebody hands you $20 million, they're going to expect a say in what you do. And I watched it happen with all these breweries who are like, oh, well, now we've got a whole seltzer line. And it's like, I refuse to make seltzers because I think I don't like them. So I started making sake instead. And we were doing sake cocktail kind of things on tap, which are great. for the tap room, but they're not necessarily marketable out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Although some people are now going to try to do that. I also think that, non-alcoholic beverages are a really interesting space. I think that, it's a pipe dream to have a business that I don't have to do quarterly tax payments to the federal government for. And that I could ship across state lines without having to worry about it.
Yeah.
I think that the opposite side of that is, I mean, I don't know how much you follow this, but like Deschutes just did this big, they did this big non-alcoholic beer push, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've seen this, but like, so now they're making this non-alcoholic beer for all these other breweries and sending it to them in bond. And I look at that, and I've hung out with the guys at Deschutes. It's a massive operation, and it's, they've got to keep pivoting towards the money because they're giant.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, I look at that and I'm like, listen, the demographic of people, first of all, making non-alcoholic beer takes a massive infrastructure buy. It's like $100,000 just for like a baseline centrifuge to make that stuff. And to me, I think that the demographic who wants non-alcoholic beer is like 65 plus. And everybody's like, well, people want non-alcoholic, alternatives to this. I'm like, yeah, but like, if you're talking about Gen Z, this is a group of people who never drank beer to begin with. So they certainly don't care about the non-alcoholic version of it because, for better or worse, it is an acquired taste.
Yeah.
It's not when you taste the first time, you're like, yeah, I'm going to buy that forever for the rest of my life. So it's like, I think you'll see a lot of people pivot into non-alcoholic beverages. There's a brewery out of Chicago that I buy canned sparkling water from. You'll probably see a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you'll see some people fall over, and I think you'll see the smaller people who have set up around a taproom model. I think you'll see them make it. And I think we're in a valley right now. I think we've been in a recession for 30 months that nobody wanted to admit to.
Yep.
I watched, at our level, I watched the drinkership at the tap room increase and the average buy per person decrease by 30%. Because people are, and people are just not comfortable with spending money right now.
Yep.
So, I mean, because we ran a restaurant for 20 years, we understood the ebb and flow of the economy, and we'd seen this happen many times. And I was just lucky enough to understand how to get lean. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't know how to maintain their operation lean because it just takes a lot of hands to put on the thing. So whoever can get the leanest and keep producing at the quality that they were will survive, and everybody else will not, in my opinion. And that sounds terrible, but like that's what I like. No, that's my dire forecast for it.
I think that's the reality of the situation that the industry is in right now, and I think there will be a point where it bounces back. Hopefully, maybe not to the degree that it was with alcohol consumption declining, but I think if you can make it through the next couple of years, then you can build a successful brewery that has potential to scale. But I think right now you kind of have to be on the defensive a little bit and weather the storm.
And I will. Here's the upside of that. Gen Z is going to have kids and they're going to start drinking. That will happen.
Why do you say that?
Well, I mean, it's just the idea of teetotaling is not a new one in the United States. We have done this before. And it will rally back purely because, like, A, it's like heritage level stuff, and B, the demographic that people are going after right now is relatively young, and they really haven't started paying mortgages and having the kind of stresses that allow them to be like, I just want to unwind for a second. And I don't don't necessarily want to smoke a joint to do it, although that has been the alternative that's been presented generally. As much as like mushrooms and weed are cool, like they won't ever take the place of the social interactions of alcohol around meals and family, and just the fact that, like, it's something that people do in their homes already.
Mhm.
uh but you know it's at this point it's all about who can get lean and who can get variable enough that they matter in the space. And I mean, I think a lot of breweries are going to have a real tough conversation with themselves about like what it is that they produce and who
Yeah.
they are. Because a lot of breweries, although they're very nice people, like basically, like if you put all of those beers up against each other, like I double dog dare you to pick out which one's which from which brewery.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree.
And that was and from the first thing that we did, I'm like, I will put any of my beers up in a lineup of 30 beers and guarantee you can pick out it's me.
Hmm. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And that's not to say that beers aren't good from other breweries, but
No, they're
yeah,
they're great.
they're just not
They're great.
unique.
They're just not you can't discern who's who.
Right.
And like, yeah, and I mean like, and that, that works for wine, where there's
Mhm.
this like culture of sommeliers, and like, like people are really reaching for the knowledge because like it's a flex to understand what's what. But
Right.
like when things are costing $9 a glass, people aren't reaching quite as hard for that. And that's not the, predominant thing that they're going after. So it's an interesting time in the industry right now. I wish everybody a whole lot of luck and hope that everybody diversifies as quickly and as comfortably as they possibly can.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, fingers crossed for the industry and,
I feel
hoping.
like I bummed you out, man.
No.
But if
I know the reality of, kind of what we're facing here. So, it was very interesting to hear your take on everything. I think you made a lot of good points, and I think you're right. For most of everything that you said, and I think people would be well suited to follow your advice. So um, I could keep talking about this all day, but I do have to
Sure.
wrap it up. This was awesome. I so appreciate you coming on to the podcast, and
Yeah,
I guess
man.
last question for you. How can people follow you on social media? How can they learn more about Ojai Brewery?
So it's at Ojai Valley Brewery on Instagram. It's at Side Street Wine on Instagram, and our website is www.o like in ostrich, v like in victory .beer. That's ov.beer. So if you just type in ov.beer anywhere, you will find us, because writing out Ojai Valley Brewery in a URL is annoying.
Awesome. Well, Jeremy, thanks again for coming onto the podcast. This was amazing, and appreciate your time.
My pleasure.